So the core features of Bitcoin is censorship resistant, and it's a decentralized anonymous source of consensus. and that's sort of that's the strengths of Bitcoin, which are also, I guess, the qualities that make it an interesting form of money as well. But that's the central value proposition, and the things that come out of it, such as that it becomes Bitcoin is not the best payment method. It's probably the worst payment method, but Bitcoin is maybe the worst payment method, but it's available always and everywhere, which means that a lot of use cases that have not been possible before because there was nothing, now there is something. And so that's what I think the strength is of Bitcoin, that it's a fallback for when all other options have been exhausted. And when it comes to business models for startups, we've seen that the consumer payments thing is sort of been tried and didn't really pan out the way that the people thought, with merchant adoption and consumer adoption. And then that was sort of like the first wave, and the second wave was the remittance wave, which we're now seeing is not panning out. And the question is, what are the next waves going to be? My personal bet is that it's going to be international business-to-business payments. That's something that I think it's going to be, because that's always, if you've ever paid a company in another country, it's always complicated. If you're doing business with someone in another country, and especially if there's a dispute or something, then it's like sort of everybody knows that if there's a dispute, then there's like nothing to do, sort of. Yeah, because how are you gonna sue each other? This and that. It's just too costly and too complicated. But with Bitcoin, you can actually do small transactions. You can do flows of money, and that's something that I would be looking out for when that starts to really happen. Like, I think that Bitcoin is going to be a very good fallback glue between fintech startups for cases when other payment and settlement methods are not available. Bitcoin will be sort of the lowest common denominator of connections between financial companies. And that's also something that's very interesting. But that's B2B, because it still requires, I think at this stage, you still need to have professionals to really secure private keys if you have some significant amount of money. You need still professionals to handle situations like transactions not confirming or other little intricacies of Bitcoin, and that's sort of what I see. That the Bitcoin is a very expensive and complex system, simply in order to have censorship resistance and decentralized consensus. And if you don't need those things, then you don't really need Bitcoin. You can usually do other payment methods as well, but it's a good fallback. I don't know what's happening with private blockchains. My experience in this far in this field is that there's a lot more talk than there is actual business going on, and I think that may be the case with private blockchains as well. But I think it's somewhat curious that sort of banks, they see Bitcoin as dangerous and this and that, and that enables money crimes and financial crimes and things like that. So they want to deal with Bitcoin, but they still want to sort of speak the lingo of Bitcoin in a lot of ways, which is something that's I just find curious, like why it's being called blockchain technology when not like a private blockchain. Is it even a blockchain? What is it? So I don't know. I think what has happened is that banks have been spooked a little bit by this stuff, because banks are run by business school people. Business school people have studied what happened in the media. They've seen how the media industry ignored the digital innovation for a long time, and when they actually woke up to it was too late. Now you have sort of these companies that not too long ago were these proud defenders of democracy, the third pillar of society, and now they're just like making their businesses now degraded into making clickbait articles and publishing them on Facebook, which is like a social media company. I think banks have seen it, and they, even though they don't fully understand what's going on with all this new digital stuff, they're scared, and so they're like, okay, we better get our innovation going, and we better do some innovative solutions. And I think that whatever comes out of this whole private blockchain thing is actually going to be constructive. I don't see it as problematic. I just see it as banks doing innovation, and I think it's great that they are, even if their innovation is things that to a techie seems like, why didn't you have that 10 years ago? But it's still good that these solutions come out, and that maybe soon enough you will have banks with APIs, for example. Like, why doesn't the bank have an API for business account and things like that? So I think good things are going to come out of the whole private blockchain thing. But is it Bitcoin? Is it blockchain? I don't know. My thoughts on colored coins. Like I said, the core value proposition of Bitcoin is decentralized consensus and censorship resistance. When it comes to colored coins, you always have to have a trusted party who is the issuer of issuer of assets. And so then the question is, do you really need to have mining and proof of work and all of that for that use case? I don't know if you really need that. I know that CoinPrison recently released their own sort of private blockchain type solution as well, which is
Open Ledger.
Yes, which is basically building a database which timestamps into the Bitcoin blockchain every once in a while with cryptographic verification of the transactions and its immutability and things like that. And so, is that a better way, or is colored coins? I think we'll see with all of that. I still think that the actual technical implementation is not the most interesting part of it right now, because the interesting part is finding use cases for it, and finding cases where assets can be exchanged freely, sort of. And I think that there's definitely one important use case, which is standardization of tokens. That there are all these little value barriers here and there, and you have your balance in your phone, and you have your airplane miles and your gift cards and this and that, and all of these have sort of you have X amount of these units, and it would be incredibly productive if these all had the same format, they all were interchangeable with each other. If there were services where you could exchange airplane miles for gift cards for whatever. So yes, there is clearly that use case. Whether or not you need to have a blockchain for that remains to be seen. Probably not. But
depending on the value, I guess, held by the tokens.
Yes, but still, sort of, you always have, on the blockchain you have 99.99% security, but on a private blockchain you have 100% security. So it's, you know,
No, it's
but it's not a blockchain, it's a private database. But there will always be sort of, what I'm saying is that I'm not sure that you need to have the mining, you don't need to have mining when you have trusted parties, and colored coins always require a trusted party. And so, if you already have a trusted party, then the trusted party can, you know, mine or certify the transactions. You don't need to have mining farms in the north of Sweden burning up electricity. But you can do a lot of interesting things with it as well. I don't know. I have no idea. I haven't. I've read a lot about it, and I haven't seen any plausible explanations. So
it's crazy money, right?
Who knows what it is? It's unclear. I think that it's maybe one of those cases where Silicon Valley people are doing Silicon Valley things in a field that's not yet really suited for that yet. But who knows? I might be wrong. It may be that the internet, and first it was Google, then it was Facebook, then it was 21. Maybe that's maybe that is the case, but I've seen no evidence of that at this point. There's a number of companies that I think stand out. I think Local Bitcoins is a very impressive company, in what they've built and how they've built it, and it's sort of like, if you look at exchange volumes, they're right up there, and crazy volume and revenue, profitable business. Other companies that I think stand out, honestly, a lot of the Boost VC companies from the trial that I was in really stand out in that there's actual growth, there's usage, there's a company, Bitquick, that's trying to take on Local Bitcoins with a more modern user interface and some better banking stuff, and they have also very significant volume, doing a lot of actual trades, like actual business. I think Coin Prism is doing a lot of interesting things. I think there's a number of these yet small companies that are doing a lot of very interesting stuff in this area, and that's sort of who I would be lifting up. I think Arbitz is a very interesting company building a consumer-oriented wallet. They will need to integrate all of the services, but still would focus on privacy and security. I think it's an interesting thought. I'm sure I'm missing out on a lot of. I think a lot of the hardware companies are very interesting. I think Ledger is a very interesting company. Trezor, they're doing hardware, key security. The multi-sig companies, obviously, CoinKite and BitGo. And I'm sure there's others in that field as well. There's a lot of companies. I think BlockCypher is doing a lot of interesting things with their API. I think generally the exchanges in every country is it's interesting. It's not very sexy, maybe, like we're an exchange like everyone else, but still it's important and needs to be done. I think in general, when it comes to convincing and the advocacy of Bitcoin, it's part of the whole Bitcoin thing that it's a very early technology, but unlike other technologies, there's people who have financial interest. People own these tokens that they want to, and everybody wants them sort of to grow in value. So people do it people evangelize for financial reasons, or it can be for ideological reasons, for the libertarian crypto-anarchistic ideologies. It can be because of business reasons, because they have a startup or invested in a startup, things like that. I think deep down we still don't really know what Bitcoin is going to be used for and for what. And in the Western world, Bitcoin is in a lot of ways a nice to have, because Bitcoin doesn't answer. The number one question of Bitcoin is that the people need to ask themselves is, when someone says Bitcoin is a great tool to buy things online, it makes it cheaper and faster and better to buy things online, and you go, yeah, that's great. So how do I get some Bitcoin? Well, you buy it online, right? And how do you do that? Well, you use existing infrastructure, which is why it's ironic that a lot of Bitcoin companies' main problem is that banks are not very cooperative. But yeah, of course, if you're going out and saying that you're going to kill banks, and then the next moment you ask for a bank account, But back to the point is that there are a few cases in which Bitcoin is used for non-ideological reasons, and those are the really interesting ones. And we actually see some of those. We actually have users on our platform that are getting paid for services in Bitcoin, and so and it's not super many, but that exists, and it's. Countries that we previously mentioned, and the people use Bitrefill to cash it out, and that's something that's, I think, is very interesting, and that's also where we see a lot of the problems in Bitcoin, that it's not really ready for mass adoption outside of the technically skilled or the people who are incentivized to deal with the intricacies of it. And so there's a lot of, anyone who's massively advocating Bitcoin consumer adoption today, I invite anyone to, you can come to Bitrefill and you can be an intern with customer service for a couple of days, and try to explain to people that don't necessarily speak so good English that their transaction is not being confirmed by the network, and that maybe next time they should rebroadcast it with a higher transaction fee. It's like, you can't explain that, and people are like, I sent you money, why is it not going through? Well, the money that you sent, is not really confirmed. We don't really know if it's going to arrive or not, and in some cases it will, in some cases it won't, and it's still very, very early in those stages, and that's also why we, as a company, trying to get usage outside of the sort of the copying of the Bitcoin addresses and the QR codes and things like that. Bitcoin has a strong presence in the Bitcoin subculture in Silicon Valley, but it's still niche. It's still niche there too, because it's this thing driven by enthusiasts that have different reasons, ideological or financial or whatever. It's still not a mainstream thing, not even in San Francisco. And so it's, but on the other hand, there is, Sweden, if you have a Bitcoin meetup, how often does that happen? How many people show up? Like, rarely, not many. And in Silicon Valley, you can probably go to, 4 Bitcoin meetups a week if you want to, and each of them is going to have 20-30 people who are founders of startups, and so it's a lot of stuff is clearly cooking there when it comes to Bitcoin in ways that it isn't in other places. But there's also, from my personal perspective, there's a lot of people trying to fit square pegs into the round holes when it comes to applying Silicon Valley-based venture capital models to Bitcoin startups, because those models build on the fact that there is an infinite amount of users and you can do exponential growth. Whereas in Bitcoin, you can do exponential growth, but only for a very short amount of time, because then you run out of Bitcoiners. And that's where I think also the industry is. It's still like, I don't know if how to put it, but like nobody knows exactly how many Bitcoin users there actually are. And there's all these people who rely on numbers that have been published by startups who say that we have X registered users, which doesn't really say much if you don't reveal, how many active users you have, or how many, how many users have a balance that's non-zero, things like that. And so it's still a bit unknown, like how many Bitcoiners are there really? How do you count? And my personal feeling is that it's significantly fewer than what is being said on Reddit, and that makes it hard to scale up a business, and just metrics. And if your startup involves convincing people to actually start using Bitcoin, to actually become an early adopter of this technology that clearly is still has some UX limitations, let us say, then it has to be something that is like incredibly valuable. Like it can't just be a slightly better toaster or whatever. It has to be something that motivates that effort. Like, for example, I guess that's why Silk Road drew a lot of Bitcoin users. That's something that's, okay, you can't get that stuff otherwise. Alright, then that motivates for people to actually deal with all of the stuff. I think it's too soon to generalize approaches between European and American. I think a more interesting question is to generalize between venture capital based approaches and non-venture capital based approaches. And in Bitcoin, we actually have that very clearly, in that there are sort of two relatively separated groups of companies, where there are the venture capital ones, the ones that market themselves as startups. They have investors, seed rounds and all of that in Silicon Valley. But there's also a pretty big group of projects that are like, trying to earn a revenue from day one, and don't take in much venture capital. And by that I mean companies like all of the Bitcoin faucets and the little affiliate programs and the casino sites, and there's local Bitcoins and similar companies that sort of have grown outside of the whole sort of Silicon Valley inspired, at least, venture capital sphere. And that's something that I think is very interesting, and also how different the approaches are, in that the venture capital ones are often, they make these wide and lofty promises that this is going to be X, Y, Z, Q, and then you look at it but you haven't launched anything. Like there's some companies that they raise a seed round, they raise a second round, and there's still like no product to be seen. And at the same time, you have companies that don't even know what a seed round is, sort of, but they're actually making a living for a couple of people working on it and extending their company. And I think that's very, very interesting. And very interesting to observe sort of the different approaches. And I think that a problem with the Silicon Valley based approaches is that, again, it's sort of based on you bring in a lot of capital, you spend money on growth, and you add more capital, and it's growth, and then it's more capital, growth, and then it's monetization. The problem with Bitcoin is that there's not enough users to do growth forever and ever, and so companies that raise a lot of money early on they hire a lot of people, they get a big burn rate, and then they run into a wall because they can't just grow more. And investors, they want to see either revenue or growth. So if you can't show them revenue, you can't show them growth, then after a while the investors are going to be not want to invest more money, which puts a lot of companies into trouble, which is, I guess, what we saw with BitPay doing layoffs and things like that. That it becomes a bit of a trap. Whereas the companies that are doing the non-venture based approaches are growing slowly, of course, but usually it's more sustainable, and it's like you can often see like the different approaches in like who has a nice design and who has sort of things like that. I think it's very, very curious, and it's going to be very interesting to see how all of this stuff plays out.